Hey everybody, sorry for late getting this out, but here's the European theater of World War II. I will kind of just talk through this and get you all set up for what we do in class. I understand that after, as war went on here, Germany invaded deeper and deeper into Russia. We know from the last notes that Germany um, broke the non-aggression pact. They had to invade, and Germany kept invading into Russia. We're talking 40 miles into Russia, 40 miles from Moscow, Soviet capital. One of the things the Russians did was something called a scorched earth policy. It means that they burned their fields, they got rid of the animals, that kind of stuff, so the German army couldn't use it. Eventually, now the Russian winter sets. In that Russian winter, it's cold, lots of snow, there's no food, and Germany had to get all their supplies from Germany. They just slowed down, pulled back, and couldn't go as far. Now, in North Africa, things are happening too. General Erwin Rommel was the German general in North Africa. He's an expert in using tanks and artillery to push the French and British out of their colonies and really control the whole area around the Mediterranean. And one of the things that the Germans really wanted to control was the Suez Canal. The canal is in Egypt that links up the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea. They're able to get boats and submarines all the way down to India. He's done a lot of victories together and actually wrote a book about all his tactics and said, here's why I'm such a great general, yada, yada, yada. Well, until a place like El Alamein, you see that in Egypt right down here where the British are able to push back the German army. They're actually using U.S. tanks. You can see the U.S. tanks right here with a British crew on it. They're pushing back the Germans into Tunisia, and that way they control the Suez Canal, and it's not going to be, and they don't lose that really important waterway. Now, what the allies, so the U.S. and Britain and Soviet Union plan, is something called Operation Torch. Okay, this is basically the U.S. troops got into war. Operation Torch was the invasion of North Africa. They want to get what's called a soft underbelly. Basically, it's the idea that going into Germany and France would be too tough. You hit Africa and you hit Italy first, and take some of those soldiers away from Germany and France, and able to and make them move down to Italy and Africa. So the general in charge was a guy named George S. Patton. He was an expert in tanks. He had become a tank commander during World War One. He was kind of a very eccentric guy. He wrote poetry. He believed in reincarnation. He actually thought he was the reincarnation of the great European king Charlemagne, and all that kind of stuff. He wore pearl handle 6-shooters on his hips. He was kind of an interesting guy, to put it that way. They did a landing, an amphibious landing, so ships dropping off troops in Morocco, paratroopers land other places, and the big American push from the west, from Morocco, kind of the Atlantic coast side of Africa, while you have the British push from the east, kind of like getting the Germans caught in the middle, and eventually forced Germany to leave Africa for Europe. And so Rommel was actually taken out of command and sent up to France to prepare for more invasion. And way too was a practice for the invasions in France, because the same way they landed in Morocco was kind of a practice when they land on D-Day in France. Now, one of the things that they are doing in Europe is bombing. And so U.S. and British are bombing lots of German cities, those kind of things, much like Germany was doing to London in the Blitz. But instead of just dropping bombs everywhere, they try to do what's called precision bombing, only targeting certain things. So factories, military installations, rail yards, those kind of things. They use what's called the Norden bomb sight. This is what it was right here, okay? The bombers flying, they'd take control of the plane over to what's called a bombardier. They'd use this very early computer base that would figure everything out in terms of how fast the plane was going, where the target was, all those kind of things, and try to drop bombs exactly where they were supposed to go. It was a very, very early analog computer, so it didn't have any like little chips in or anything. It ran on tapes and that kind of stuff. But it was one example of lots of computer technology that were developed during World War II and used, so it wasn't so much just let's drop bombs everywhere and kill anything. It was very different that way. And one of the biggest battles this time was something called Stalingrad. So Stalingrad is a very symbolic city in southern Russia. It was, Stalin's city is what it basically means. And Germany really needed this city for its oil fields and its oil refineries. So they bombed the city. We're talking 40,000 people were killed during bombings alone. There's 300,000 troops control about 9% of the city. And the Soviet Union literally fought back. They invaded at night across the river. There's a shortage of ammo and weapons. There's a movie called Enemy at the Gates, where they show the Russians, one guy, they give the first guy in line a gun, they give the second guy in line an extra clip of ammunition, and they charge in. So when the guy with the gun got shot, you pick the gun up and keep going. I mean, it was a shortage of everything. There are snipers that are fighting each other in the city, and eventually, over a months-long time, Germany slowly pushes, slowly pushed out of the city. Guys, in this battle, over 2 million civilians and and soldiers both die in this battle alone. Of all those Germans, 300,000 troops that wouldn't go fight in Stalingrad, only 5,000 actually made it back to Germany. Either they were taken capture or killed in battle. And it was kind of a turning point on the Eastern Front because after this point, Germany was pushing further into Russia. The Allied victory had in Africa, so you have Erwin Rommel here is defeated by Patton and Montgomery. Patton has a little line for Rommel. He goes, "I read your book." Yeah, okay. And so now the Allies that took over Africa can now invade into Italy, that quote unquote soft underbelly. And so you can see here where they kind of get pushed out. You can see the fighting here in the desert, which was hot, not a lot of water. I mean, it was a really rough time for people who are fighting in North Africa. So next step is Italy. So first they decided to invade here to the island of Sicily right here. Sicily is very, very rocky, very hard to get to. Germans and Italians are really well defended, so a lot of guys die are injured fighting in Sicily. Patton's actually removed from command here. He is a guy who has shell shock or battle fatigue, and he actually Patton slaps a kid who's scared and refuses to fight. And so a different guy named Omar Bradley is put in charge instead. And Italy falls pretty quick. The Italian troops aren't as well armed as the German troops. And they really quickly move through Italy. They take Rome, bombing the cities as they go. And eventually people aren't getting happy, losing battles, and cities getting destroyed, that Mussolini is chased out of office. And the new Italian government, they basically cancel out their treaty with Germany and sign a peace treaty with the Allies, that being U.S. and Britain and Soviet Union. And Germany kind of sends their troops in. Mussolini is put in charge of North Italy, which is still controlled by German troops, and they sent 1,000 German troops to defend Italy. Mussolini eventually was captured and killed, and put on display here with his mistress in a city where he was captured. And actually, if you talking to an Italian exchange student last year, and had all kinds of interesting things to say about Mussolini. Basically, Germans and U.S. soldiers have a big standoff at the end of the war in the Italian mountains. They dug in there until the end of the war, but it brings those German troops away from Germany and France. So that's where we start seeing the invasion of France now. It's all Operation Overlord in 1944, D-Day. Well, the dates last guys remember, June 6, 1944, where the U.S. and Britain and Canada and their allies basically get the largest fleet ever assembled of ships, battleships, destroyers, transport ships, all that kind of stuff. And they're sending with air bombardment and airstrikes and navy bombardment and paratroopers and land attack to attack France. Actually, to do this, they actually did a little trick to do this as well. The whole goal was to make Germany believe that the Allies were going to attack somewhere else. And so they put General Patton, who had been taken on command, put him in something called the First U.S. Army Group, or FUSAG, and it was literally a fake army that featured, this right here is a inflatable tank. They had inflatable tanks and fake tents and fake trucks, all kind of stuff to make, and they put it on a different side of Britain to make the Germans think they're going to invade at a place called Calais. Instead, they land at a place called Normandy. And it's just pictures of D-Day, June 6, 1944. When you have all these troops, American, British, Canadian, that land on the beach of Normandy. We'll do some more stuff with this in class. Watch a little clip of the video, that kind of stuff. But I mean, it was the day of days, basically. These guys waited ashore here, and up in this little hills here, you have all these machine gun nests, and guys are just getting mowed down left and right. And it was an all-day, effort to try and control that beach. And eventually, they control that beach. They set up this huge, fake harbor, if you will. They sunk ships down here. They put in lines and gas lines, all kind of stuff to run materials into France. So the guy in charge was General Dwight D. Eisenhower. The guy was in charge of this whole thing. He was the supreme Allied commander. And so right here is Normandy, where you have the U.S. troops landing at Utah and Omaha. You have the British at you have the British and Canadians here at Gold Sword and Juno, where the British Canadians landing. And so they are trying to capture this whole area here. Over here is something called Point du Hoc, where you have U.S. Army Rangers had to capture over here. You have paratroopers being dropped in behind here. And that first day, you kind of get that first little, kind of see where the colors go here. Each day, you get more and more land until eventually you capture all of France. So eventually, France is liberated. The Allies are able to break out of the beaches, push back German Army and liberate soldiers. And when the U.S. goes into cities, they're literally treated like celebrities. I mean, there's parades and parties who are celebrating that Germans are pulling back and leaving France. Well, big reasons that this whole thing is successful. And you kind of see some pictures here. Your troops here, the tanks. Well, the hardest parts that the U.S. had were these hedgerows. The lands were divided by these big hedgerows. They're really thick, really thick, like dirt and roots that are growing here. Even tanks couldn't bust through it. They had to put special almost like little rakes on the front of the tanks to crush through and break through those hedgerows down, even just to be able to break out of France. One of the reasons this whole thing was able to take place because of the resistance movement in both France and the Netherlands. There were resistance fighters, guys who were spying on the Germans. They were stealing their codes. They were radioing information to the Allies, that kind of stuff, to give them information to help attack. They were attacking troops from behind, all that kind of stuff. These guys got caught. They were executed, and there was no questions asked. But luckily, they were able to help out, do that kind of stuff. My favorite story is that they would watch what color of landing lights the German planes were using. They would radio ahead to British and U.S. planes, who then put those color landing lights in. Those planes would fly over at night, thinking that they were German planes, and bomb the German airfields. And all these kind of things they used to be able to help the Allies out. Now, the Battle of Bulge is the German last-ditch effort. So, looking, in 1944, the entire German army basically invades this big bulge right here and back into France. And they throw everything right in the line. Almost like a big two surprise attack, causes big bulge, hence why it's called Battle of Bulge in the Ardennes forests of Belgium. Now, there's not a lot of reinforcements, okay? And right here, this place called Bastogne with 101st Airborne and stuff. There's they made the show Band of Brothers about, and they're stuck there. No food, not a lot of gas, that kind of. They're kind of stuck there, surrounded for this whole time. Eventually, George Patton and his guys are able to break in and rescue everybody and kind of cut this off. One of the biggest problems with there was a gas shortage. The gas line, the gas pipe that ran from France to Britain to France got cut, and they had to get fuel for tanks and jeeps and that kind of stuff, and they had to stop because of that. No member of the 101st that was over here ever said they were rescued by Patton, but it's kind of one of those stories of the war. Eventually, we were able to push things back. Here's some pictures. It's snow, cold. The guys didn't have winter clothing at all. They're in their summer clothing yet. Guys, were sleeping in the foxhole. It was bad. I mean, it was the worst time. People couldn't say it was. People losing toes, the frostbite, all that was going on. So here's the picture of the invasion of Germany here. So you have the Soviets pushing in from the east, British and French from the west. One of the things that Germany breaks out there this time was called the V-2 rocket. It was basically a cruise missile, the first ever missile. They launched it from Germany at London, killed a lot of people that way. The Allies responded with firebomb attacks. It was so they would drop napalm, basically napalm firebombs on the city of Dresden. The entire city of Dresden right here is basically destroyed by these firebomb attacks. So this stuff is still going on back and forth. And both the troops are trying to race to Berlin, basically, because whoever got to capture the city of Berlin, would control, make those decisions after the war is done. And the Soviets got there first. Before the Soviets can come in, Hitler marries his then girlfriend Eva Braun. Get married. They then commit suicide. Hitler takes cyanide and shoots himself, make sure his body is cremated because he was scared what would happen if the Soviets got a hold of him and captured him. After Hitler is gone, Germany's then commanded by a guy named Hermann Goering, who was the air commander for Germany. And this is the same time that the Soviets and the Americans start fighting the concentration camps. And all of a sudden, the ideas of the Holocaust, which we'll talk about in more detail next week, starts coming out. And people start saying, oh my gosh, this is what's really going on in Germany at this time. Now, what's going on here in a place called Yalta on the Black Sea, you have a meeting of the three big leaders here, the big three of Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin get together and discuss, well, what to do now that the war is almost done, what to do. Stalin wants to discuss Poland. He wants to know if he can keep Poland or not, basically what it comes down to. Roosevelt is like, hey, guys, we're fighting this war over in the Pacific, and which we'll talk about later on. We're fighting this war. Give us some help here, okay? Churchill wants to make sure that all these different countries get to have free elections. There's no more dictators in Europe. And they also try and figure out what to do in Germany after the war is done. So these guys get together on the Black Sea. They talk about what to actually do, what to actually happen. Now, that's great, but then in 1945, Roosevelt dies. He's at Warm Springs in Georgia, where his respite is, and he dies. His brain aneurysm dies, and then Harry S. Truman, his vice president, takes over. Now the troops actually stop. Okay, they do day of remembrance for Roosevelt. And that actually allows a lot of concentration camps to move, and Truman has to get caught quick because Truman was really left out on a lot of the ideas. He know about a lot of stuff. He didn't know about the atomic bombing, for that matter, and so he needs to get caught up in what's going on. But by May 8th, 1945 here, is VE Day. That's the day that Germany surrenders. The war is done. Europe rejoices. The U.S. rejoices. Here's some of the party in London. You can see right here, a party in New York, I think it is. And actually, in Potsdam, Germany, then, Truman, Stalin, Churchill, so the new big three get together and talk about what to do. They decided to divide Germany into 4 spots. They decided to Berlin into 4 areas as well. They all kind of added and subtracted Poland, what to the Holocaust criminals, and Truman saying, "Hey guys, Pacific's still going on. We have a powerful weapon." Finish off then, guys. Thank you.